Good morning, good morning, good morning, and TGIF. I have to give a special shout out to our girl I call Madam Secretary, Christina Alaska. She's back. She's been on a little hiatus. Can't say that I blame her. Good morning, OG Nanny. Retro Girl is in the house. Lindsay, good morning. Anyone besides Walking Dead is new here. Walking Dead threw me for a loop the other day, and I've laughed about it ever since. I'm like, if you're new or hiding in the bushes, put a 1 in. So we welcomed our new friends like Jen and Blue. We went through all that, and then all of a sudden, here comes Walking Dead. Damn it, Shonda. Shonda, I talk to you on the phone almost every damn day. We were talking together throughout the tornadoes. Piss on you, Shonda. What y'all doing to me? Sweetie Pie 30. Look at that. Sweetie Pie 30 put a 1 in. She's new to the channel. Okay? So Shonda and Walking Dead can go eat a pizza off each other's asses. Okay? They can go do that. You girls are cracking me up way too much. Let's take a moment to welcome all our friends except for Pat K, who says she's new here. How can Pat K be new when she's our main mod? Hashtag WWPD. Gonna do with you girls today. Bev is me. New. Welcome, welcome, welcome. You're gonna love it here. You are gonna love it here. Oh, for fuck's sake. DT Driver is my husband. Are you serious? He funded this whole damn channel for a year before I got monetized. Yeah, you're going to find out what new is when you get home. Goodness. Little Greg won't get a wink of sleep. Well, let's take a second and welcome everyone. Shake a hand, and especially people that have never been here before. And now we have Katie did. She says, I'm new too, LOL. Bitch, I've been on the phone with you since 4:30 this morning. Goodness. Again, Sweetie Pie, I is Beverly. Everyone, you're going to love it here. We just kick back. We talk about true crime. Don't like the drama too much unless it just needs to be discussed. So, we are live and shit. And they are deliberating. Yes, they are. They are deliberating. We have a lot of things that we need to think about. A lot. No DNA on Richard Allen. Libby's phone did not move after 2:32 p.m. on that horrible day. Yet, someone plugged headphones into it around 5:30 p.m. that night. Evidence has been dismissed. We have a judge that seems to be a little biased to me. And hey, Richard Allen could be the guy. He could be the only one. But it just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. Thank you for the Crime Lines and Lies membership, my girl Sophia. Also, look at that. Gaelic girl gifted a Crime Lines and Lies membership. Our girl, Kat OG. She's damn sure not new around here. Left a beautiful donation to the channel. Let's get our umbrellas. Don't be sad. Don't be shy. Show some love. That's just something we do around here. Let's get to your comments from the last show. And I apologize that we did not have a show yesterday. I was misinformed. That the closing arguments would be televised. I was waiting on that. And I also got some bad information that the verdict would be in quickly. How fast do you think the verdict will come in today? Do you think it will be today? Do you think they will have to deliberate into next week? Broken Golf Doll said, I'm expecting a verdict today. Our new friend, Sweetie Pie 30, said, nothing in this case adds up. Danny Dane said, before dinner. The thing is, these jurors have been in a hotel room to the point if they go to use their cell phone, they have to have a bailiff looking over their shoulder. So you know they're in a hurry to get home. They want to sleep in their bed. They want to see their kids. They want to get back to work. They want to do what they normally do. I didn't realize it was that strict. Well, let's look at this.
From now, closing arguments in the Delphi murders trial set to begin. The jurors have now heard all the evidence, and the defense rested their case on Wednesday.
Now, we're also going to hear the jury instructions in this case against Richard Allen, again, the man accused of killing Abby Williams and Libby German outside of Delphi in 2017. Our Kit Hanley is live in Delphi. Also, Russ McQuaid there with more. Kit, let's start with you on what is expected today.
Yeah, Angela, Daniel, good morning. After 17 long days in court, all of the evidence has now been presented to the 12 jurors and 3 alternates here in Carroll County, and we are inching toward the final days of this trial here. I'm joined with Russ McQuaid, who is, as we know, has been following this trial every single day. He's been in the courtroom bringing us all of the latest. Good morning, Russ.
Good morning, Kit.
It's good to be here with you. Now, as we know, closing arguments are set for today. What do you expect both sides to bring to the table?
Prosecutor Nicholas McLeland goes first. He's got 2.5 hours to make his case. He'll probably use about 2 hours, an hour 45 of that this morning. He will say, one, you've heard from Richard Allen, the horse's mouth, in those phone calls from prison to his wife saying, I did it, I killed Abby and Libby, plus he told that to a prison psychiatrist. 2, we've got a bullet that we found at the crime scene. We tested it in the State Police Crime Lab. That proves that bullet came from Richard Allen's gun. It matches a gun that is in his house.
Okay, I want to talk about the pew-pew. YouTube doesn't like it when you say G-U-N. There's a poll up, Ruby Slippers. You might have to refresh. I want to talk about the pew-pew. So they found an unspent casing at the crime scene that matches Richard Allen's pew-pew. Here is the thing for any pew-pew owners in the chat. I'm not on the up and up about ballistics. However, I can say this. I know what pew-pews we have around our house. So if an unspent casing was found somewhere, particularly by a crime scene, and that unspent casing would fit one of our guns, I'd be shitting bricks. It wasn't fired from the gun, as we know. It's an unspent casing that can be used in Richard Allen's. How does that make any sense? And I've seen some comments with people saying, oh, well, they found that. Oh, they found that. Good morning, Nene Nut. It has to be spent to match. I live in Oklahoma. You're going to find unspent casings anytime you go hunting. And let's just say it's a crime scene. It can go in pretty much any gun in Oklahoma. That doesn't make any sense at all. The state's case is ridiculous. Danny Dane said, yes, you will. Danny Dane, I can find unspent bullets in your neck of the woods. And they're going to fit in someone's gun. It doesn't mean it's that pew-pew. Connie, girl, thank you for the super sticker. Thank you for supporting this channel. You are amazing. Again, I'm not on the up and up with ballistics. However, that unshot bullet, casing, shell, whatever you want to call it, could probably fit a lot of guns around Indiana. They can't hang their case on that.
2, we've got a bullet that we found at the crime scene. We tested it in the State Police Crime Lab. That proves that bullet came from Richard Allen's gun. It matches a gun that is in his house. It matches other bullets we found in that house. 3, Richard Allen knew something that only the killer would know, that there was a white van driving nearby, and he says it interrupted him during his attempted assault on the girls.
I want to talk about that. Something only the killer would know, that there was a white van in the area. No, because other witnesses have testified that they saw the white man. It's no secret he was on the trail that day. None at all. It's no secret. He admits to it, but the timeline doesn't match, and particularly the heinousness of the crime. Thank you so much for the donations to the channel. They're talking about the white van theory, that only the killer would know that, but other people that were on the trail on an unusually warm afternoon in February when school was out, others saw it. Well, they're not the killer. They're not the killer. He was already interviewed, Richard Allen, in 2017. So why dig him back up in 2022? I have no problem with circumstantial cases because they happen, but this one's not adding up. And you cannot convince me, unless the dude is Batman, that one person did this. Please do not forget what the FBI said in their investigation. FBI search warrant revealed that law enforcement believes the girls lost a lot of blood during the murders with an unspecified weapon and were not killed in the same location where the bodies were discovered. So old 3-beer Ricky, because remember, he drank 3 of the 6-pack, supposedly 3-beer Ricky, okay? Think about that. He had 3 beers. He's been to rehab, the whole 9 yards, so he knows how to hold his alcohol. So 3 Beer Ricky orchestrates all this. 2:32 p.m., Libby's phone is not moving any longer. Brad Weber was home at 2:30. That white van supposedly shocked 3 Beer Ricky. So from there, he forced the girls down the hill, across a private driveway, down another hill, across Deer Creek, up a creek bank in 2 minutes. Okay? Remember, Brad Weber is driving by at 2:30 p.m. That's what startled him. So in those 2 minutes, that's what happened. Look at that doobie Scooby. Been a friend for 3 months. Girl, you all are making me blush today. Nothing's making sense to me, y'all. I don't want to see anybody that's guilty get off. But nothing here is making sense to me. 2 friggin' minutes? The only other case we've heard 2 minutes is good old Candace Wells saying, in 2 minutes, Summer was just gone.
There was testimony from a man who lives on a nearby road who said, yes, I would have been driving a white van up that road at that time. 4, we've got a photograph of what looks like Richard Allen's car, which would have been parked nearby the crime scene. Of course, Richard Allen admitted, yeah, I was up there walking near the Monon High Bridge that day. That's the prosecution. The defense is then going to come back. They also have 2.5 hours. They get to use all of their time before we go to lunch, probably about 1 o'clock this afternoon. The defense is going to say you can't take Richard Allen's word for it. He was in solitary confinement. The state prison psychologist diagnosed him as suffering from psychosis. And under psychosis and solitary confinement, you're going to say anything. And that's why you can't take his words at face value. They were also...
Okay, the defense is saying he was in psychosis. That's the reason they gave him Haldol. I saw a few comments from a few of my friends in here the other day saying that they've had relatives in their life that have taken Haldol and it makes them hallucinate. So if the only thing about the day that Richard remembers is Brad Weber's white van, and I'm not done with him anytime soon. I'm not done with Tony Klein. I'm not done with Brad Holden. I'm not done with Kagan. But if all he remembers is seeing the girls and the white van, how on earth can he be the guy? Why was the FBI told they were no longer needed in the case? Mandy Moo, thank you for this reminder. They could have taken temps to determine the time of death via their liver. Nope, they skipped that. How about stomach contents? Nope, don't need it. Some people will say it's because of the exorbitant amount of blood that was gone from the girls, which appeared to be what they would call a sacrifice.
So inconsistent. 2, there is no DNA linking Richard Allen to the crime scene, nor any DNA found at Richard Allen's house or face value. They were also inconsistent. 2, there is no DNA linking Richard Allen to the crime scene, nor any DNA found at Richard Allen's house or in his car from the girls linking him to that. They're also going to take issue with that bullet comparison. They're going to say the conditions under which the state police made that comparison were not an apples to apples comparison. They were an apples to oranges comparison. Then they're going to wrap it all up and say, ladies and gentlemen, you have heard from day one, from February 13th of 2017 until even, what day is this? Even Tuesday afternoon, that the state police and FBI investigation was incompetent, misleading. The ball was dropped. And you're not just hearing it from the defense. We've had police testify on the stand, go, yeah, we made a mistake on that. Yeah, we dropped the ball on that. Yeah, we didn't have the tapes. The videotapes have been erased on that. So you're going to wrap it up in a ball, because what you're bargaining for, you're trying to get those jurors to believe there's a reasonable doubt that Richard Allen did not commit this crime.
Right. 17 days full of loaded evidence from both sides. Now, following these closing arguments, we do know that the jury will receive instructions from Special Judge Frangol. We have them in our hands right here. Can you lay out some of those?
Oh, she is a special judge, for sure. I've never seen a more biased judge in my entire life. How does this get Libby and Abby justice? How? If there's so many questions. How would this get them justice? There's like way too many other names that are notably involved. We spoke about this the other day. Who is Bridge Guy? Looks like Brad Holder to me. They say the two sketches are combined. No, these sketches came from eyewitnesses on the trail. Here's the other one. Good old Nasty Chadwell. Good old Nasty Chadwell. He's the one that would go and get kittens to antagonize his pit bulls, amongst other nasty, nasty things. We cannot, there's old Brad Holder again. He was in line. Brad Holder, I'm here at the viewing, February 18th. 2017. Here at the viewing, the line is long. Logan is all upset, he said. Ron Logan lied about his whereabouts the day of. Mr. Fish Trainer. Remember? He said he had to go to Lafayette, Indiana to get tropical fish and then train them. Ron Logan, how do you train a freaking fish? You teaching it to bark? You putting the fish on a leash? And Fran Gall, that chick's on my last nerve. She needs to be removed.
Following these closing arguments, we do know that the jury will receive instructions from Special Judge Frangol. We have them in our hands right here. Can you lay out some of those?
What we have is the preliminary instructions that she started with last month. Her final instructions will be tuned up. They will be similar to this, and we will hear that in the courtroom this afternoon. However, she is going to say the concept of reasonable doubt means it doesn't have to be all doubt, but it has to be reasonable doubt. Use your common sense. And it puts the pressure on the prosecution, because it's a high bar the state has to clear to find a man guilty of a crime. And she's going to say, if all things come out even, you have to give the benefit of the doubt to the defendant, the man who is on trial. You also have to consider the credibility of the witnesses and the testimony, and that includes not only witnesses you heard from the stand, but also Richard Allen in those videotapes you saw from prison. Do you find him believable? Do you find his version of this believable? You also cannot hold it against Richard Allen that he did not take the stand to testify in his own defense, which from the defense point of view, frankly, why would he? We've already got him on tape. You heard him in police interviews, and you also heard him in some of those phone calls saying, I didn't do this. So his side's been told. Then what we do is the judge reads those final instructions, gives it to the jurors. The bailiff is sworn in. He takes the jurors back to the jury room where they begin their deliberations. The deliberations begin with usually the picking of a foreman of that jury. Occasionally there will be a straw poll taken to find out the temperature of the room. Where does everybody stand? Then the jurors start going through, usually in a chronological order from the first witness on through, what they heard, what did you hear, what seems to not fit, what does fit, and then that's how we progress. I expect this is going to be a long deliberation.
I was just about to ask, when do you expect the verdict, in your opinion, to come in?
I don't think it'll come in today. I think it'll come in tomorrow. I think there is so much weighing on these jurors. And when you're covering a trial or watching it from the outside, you have to take a look at this and go, not based on what I know, based on what those jurors are hearing in that courtroom. I sat down and I wrote down all the questions that weren't being asked that I know about. And there's reasons. Were they overlooked? Was there no evidence to ask it? Was it a strategic decision to not ask that question? Put yourself in the shoes of those jurors, 12 people, good and true, from Fort Wayne, who have been bussed halfway across the strait. They've been living at a hotel in Lafayette ever since the middle of October. Every time they have access to a cell phone, they've got to do it with a bailiff looking over their shoulder as they call their family.
Why do they have these jurors in Fort Wayne so sequestered? Is it because of the high profile of the case? Why? Because even when they are in their hotel room with their personal property to use their cell phone to call home to say, hey, how are the kids doing? You know, waiting on the continental breakfast tomorrow. I hear they're having some crusty donuts and some orange juice, you know, that type of thing. They have to have a bailiff looking over their shoulder. Why? Why? This is not the O.J. Simpson trial. And they have ways to find out if someone's researching a case. Dark Willow wants an emotional support fish. Well, I'll tell you what. You throw $1 in this chat, I'm going to put you in a drawing to get your own emotional support chat. Sorry, emotional support fish.
Fort Wayne, who have been bussed halfway across the strait. They've been living at a hotel in Lafayette ever since the middle of October. Every time they have access to a cell phone, they've got to do it with a bailiff looking over their shoulder as they call their family. So put yourself in the shoes of those jurors. What are they thinking, and what have they been exposed to as they sit down with their notes and try to figure out, did this man kill Abby and Libby?
Definitely a very hard job for these jurors. Thank you so much.
Did he kill them? Did he kill them? Was he the only one? Was he the only one involved? I'm not going to forget about this. This is between Kagan and Doug Carter. Kagan, what do you mean? I never had a Dropbox. Doug Carter, yes, you did. Kagan, that I sent links for? What do you mean? Doug Carter said, Bud, from your Dropbox account off your phone, we have started one of the largest child pornography investigations ever taken in the state of Indiana. Kagan, well, you're okay, but that's not me. It's off your phone, dude. It's your account. Doug Carter said, your Dropbox account. See, there's more to it. Look at this Angie baby. She's in the drawing. She's going to be in the drawing for two fish.
Done in the Delphi murders trial.
Now the case is in the hands of the jury. Deliberations began yesterday and pick back up again in less than an hour from now. Let's go to Fox 59's Angela Gannott. She is live outside the Carroll County Courthouse this morning with the latest. Ange, good morning.
Yes, Daniel, I wanted to start with the notes that are being left around the community today to honor Abby and Libby. Delphi strong, Abby and Libby strong. Some of the posters that you're seeing out here today. Jennifer Roth and Danielle joined me live this morning to talk a little bit about what they're doing this morning and the importance of this. I know you both know the family. You specifically have children that were in school with Abby and Libby. Can you first just talk about why it's so important to be out here today and to be hanging these signs?
We just wanted to show support for the girls and to keep them in the forefront. Just whatever happens in the courthouse isn't up to us. What is up to us is remembering the girls.
I know, Danielle, this was your idea. I know that it's a little hard to talk about, so we're going to speak only to you a little bit about the girls, what you remember. You have a son that's a senior in high school in class with the girls. Can you tell us a little bit about what this has been like for you all as residents that want to do more, but you know that you really can't do anything?
Right. Just over the years showing support. I mean, the girls were everybody's girls. The town's small, the community's tight. Everybody's kids did what the girls did. It wasn't unusual to go to High Bridge. It wasn't unusual to be out and around. Nothing they did was out of the ordinary, and they could have been anybody's kids. And it is small, so everybody knew them and everybody knows their families, and it's just, being supportive.
Yeah. Has it been hard to be at the center of attention in a way, and for people to perhaps judge or say things about your community and to not be able to speak or to not let people know the truth? Because I know for you, this is you did not want to speak today. And I think people at home know that too. It's been very hard for us to hear from the people of this community because you don't want it to be about you. You want it to be about the girls. Tell me a little bit about that and why that has made it even harder.
You don't want to feed into, you can find what you want to know anywhere. So for me personally, I don't really watch the news. I don't really follow things. I listen, I'll hear the outcome. And, for me, it's just about the girls and not getting, it is frustrating when you hear people say negative things about your town because you're just doing what you can do and trying to, be supportive. There's nothing you can do. Some people are always going to find something wrong with what you do. So you do what you can and don't worry about it.
When you made the signs, was there anything in particular that you really wanted we're going to watch you hang these, what you really want the focus to be on in the next few hours or the next few days when this verdict is reached? You wrote them with your hands, you thought about them, they're on your heart.
Their names are on every single one. And that's what I want people to remember is the girls. This is what it's about.
I appreciate you. I know it's hard and you didn't want it to, and I know it's hard for you. Thank you. This was your idea to make the signs and to say we want to show this family support. I can see that you almost are in tears, and I know it's hard that you didn't want to talk, so I'm not going to stick the microphone in your face, but thank you. And thank you for being brave to honor two girls. My daughter was 13 when this happened too. So we're all with you guys and thinking about you. Anna, Daniel, we're going to send it back to you.
And, we cannot forget Abby and Libby. And obviously Jennifer touched on how close this community is and how small it is. I know you had an opportunity to talk to the family. How do you think that they're holding up and handling what's happening right now with the jury about to make a decision?
Again, this is just my opinion. I know as a mom, and I don't want to start crying, okay, because I'm a journalist, right? But I actually don't want to really go too much into the personal conversation that I had with Becky Patty, but I just told her that she was so brave. And thank you for showing the bravery and the courage that you did. And she said, I had no choice. And that it's just hard, right? And I know that she put on Facebook, she wants justice, she wants clarity, she wants truth. And that's something that we're all, praying for today.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So touching hearing her say, those were all of our girls. I mean, it's so true. Everyone can relate to just how losing a child and how tough this would be for them. So, yeah.
Angela Ganote live outside the Carroll County.
Angela Ganote has done amazing work, and so has Russ in this case. Mary, gifted 10 Crime Lines and Lives memberships. If you want to know how to be green and come to our members' lives and see the members tab, there's the link right there. Woohoo. Woohoo. Thank you, Mary. It's actually raining here. So it's raining in the show and it's raining outside my window. Get your umbrellas. Thank you again, Mary. Well, old Aunt Nancy Grace came on last night, and her favorite word, well, next to tot mom, is bombshell. Bombshell closing arguments. It seems to me that the prosecution is only focused on 3 things: his confessions, which I would take that hook, line, and sinker, unless I knew the whole truth, okay? About solitary confinement, Haldol, starvation, all those things. The unspent bullet, and him seeing the white van. That's what I'm gathering. That's not enough for me. And I just really hope and I really pray that this jury goes off of facts, inconsistencies, the timeline, as opposed to straight emotion because they want justice for the girls. Because sometimes justice isn't just a conviction. There have been wrongful convictions. Linda G said not guilty. All right, girlfriend. So let's see what old Aunt Nancy had to say, and then we're going to do something against my better judgment. We're going to talk about the autopsies.
I really believe that Abby and Libby would be proud of you for standing strong, even in the face of immense pressure. Some of these individuals have postponed retirement, passed on promotional opportunity, have dedicated personal time away from their families, given up nights, weekends, and holidays, all while in the pursuit of accountability for Abby and Libby. I know that today's announcement will not diminish your resolve, and I hope you have found just a bit of peace in this most complicated world.
Wow, how true. Those were the words of Superintendent Doug Carter with the Indiana State Police months and months ago. Yet it all rings true.
Yes, Aunt Nancy. By the way, if you're new here, when I pause, we have this thing that says they're showing their O face. Could you imagine old David on top of Aunt Nancy taking her to Pound Town, and that's the O face? Okay, that's her O face. That's what we got for today. Absolutely, Doug Carter's words ring true. We're missing something in the evidence. We're missing something in the evidence. Something's missing.
The trial that has taken weeks and years in the making culminates with closing arguments today in the Delphi Court of Law. Joining me, an all-star panel to make sense of what we know right now. But first, to Cheryl McCollum, forensic expert, founder of the Cold Case Research Institute, and star of Zone 7 podcast. Cheryl McCollum, when I heard the words of Indiana State Police Superintendent Doug Carter, it really gave me pause. Did you hear what he said? That facing immense pressure and perpetual criticism, that LE had moved forward. And that is what this trial has been: immense pressure and perpetual criticism.
They have been attacked from all sides. They have stood firm. They have been professional. They have been without hesitation to make sure that justice is served for Abby and Libby.
Well, the judge advised everyone at the beginning of the closing arguments that went down today in a court of law that each side would have 2.5 hours, but only evidence and testimony that was actually admitted at trial could be allowed. The judge trying to...
I have a question for all my friends in here. Why was the Odinism dismissed as evidence? Why? Why were they not allowed the doctor to come on to explain that Richard having no DNA on his body, on his clothes, in his car, his DNA not being left behind at the crime scene? Why was that expert testimony not allowed? Is the judge a damn Odinist? We already heard that it was a clerical error, that they skipped over Richard Allen after he was already interviewed in 2017. Who's all part of your little Odinist society?
Keep out theories on Odinism, trying to keep out the SOD defense. Some other dude did it because that did not come into evidence. What is the point of closing arguments? To summarize what the jury has heard. Now, we know some of the last testimony that jury heard was the defense. Listen.
On the 17th day of testimony in the Delphi murders trial, Richard Allen's defense attorney, Brad Rossi, addresses the court, telling the judge the defense rests. Judge Francis Gull was surprised, as was the state. After a recess, the state called 3 rebuttal witnesses. 2 had already testified, but the state called Dr. John Martin, the prison psychologist who met with Richard Allen at Westville Correctional Facility.
Very interesting. The state puts on a rebuttal case. Now, let me go straight out to our legal expert, Philip Dubé, renowned trial lawyer, currently a public defender in the LA County judicial system. Philip, thank you for being with us. This is how it goes down. We know that the state started opening statements. The defense, of course, they can waive their second argument. The defense goes next, and then the state finishes with a third closing argument. In most jurisdictions, that is because if the defense puts up anything other than the defendant's testimony, anything, the state gets a final closing argument. Therein lies the rub for the defense. Of course, the defense put up a lot of evidence, so the state gets a final closing argument to the jury. That is well established across the country. I believe it's because the state carries the burden of proof. What about you?
Yeah, I agree. Remember.
No shit, Aunt Nancy. Aunt Nancy was in the courtroom, and don't get me wrong, I love Nancy Grace. But sometimes her research isn't exactly I's dotted and T's crossed. Okay? She'll go in and listen to a little bit of a summation and make her mind up. She doesn't know what we know from following this case for years and years and years and years. There's too many people in that town to protect. Aunt Nancy doesn't know that. She doesn't know it.
The prosecution gets an opportunity to rebut what it is that the defense is saying. And if you don't allow them to rebut it, it looks as if they have not carried their burden. So the prosecution is allowed to await to see what the sum total of the defense case is in their closing. And then in their rebuttal, or sometimes we call it their B argument, A, B, they can then attack each point with the evidence that they've put on.
This guy is as dry as friggin' milk toast. I love when people splain shit to us we already know. Geez, what is this, 8th grade civics? This guy, he looks like he's got cum dripping out of his ears. He is vanilla ice cream with no sprinkles. Look, dude, we got it.
To rebut that.
Exactly. That is exactly why the state gets a second closing argument. Of course, they have the option to waive that second closing argument at the end and do it all at the beginning, but that's typically a very bad move. So what did the defense present to the jury? What will be fresh on the jury's mind? First and foremost, the only tangible evidence that links Richard Allen to the murder scene: ballistics.
Ballistics. Exactly. Ballistics. The only ballistics we have are the unspent bullet, the casing. You know how many guns that unspent casing could fit into? Rexy said, I gotta go. I can't listen to her BS. I love you, Rexy. I promise I'll be nice. We're done with Nancy Grace. We're going to the autopsy. The severe horror of these girls took more than one person. Please do not forget, in such a short amount of time, someone dressed Abby. Dressed Abby. Now, who is going to have a pew-pew in their hand? He just brought one bullet? That's what you're telling me? I think he's involved somehow. And I want to know why they couldn't exclude Brad Weber's gun. He has a gun that would fit that casing too. Did this all alone? I don't know. We're going to talk about the autopsy. I'm putting up a trigger warning. You're just going to hear me say it. Because in the right mind of common sense, you would know that one person couldn't have done this in the amount of time that the state has outlined.
About Libby's cell phone. Thanks for inviting us in. This is our Delphi debrief on WTHR Plus. In a moment, our legal analyst Katie Jackson Lindsay will be breaking down the developments for you. But first, senior investigative reporter Bob Siegel and Emily Longnecker spent today in court in Delphi. Bob and Emily, this was a really intense day all the way around, wasn't it?
It was, Scott, and we had another literal front row seat to be able to take in the testimony today. And
I'm glad Madam Secretary Christina Laska brought this up. Why weren't the girls found that night unless they were moved? We already know, according to the testimony, that where they were killed is not where they were left. And we know Abby was redressed. We know that Libby's phone didn't move. Now, probably because it was turned off, who knows? But somebody plugged headphones into it around 5:30 p.m. None of this is making sense. Ron Logan lived right there. You know, the fish trainer?
Emily, this was a tense, it was an emotional, it was a fascinating day of court today, day 5.
Yeah, I would say you listened to more emotional testimony in the morning. I was hearing more of the technical testimony about the cell phone extraction from Libby's phone.
Yeah, very different types. We heard from witnesses today, and we heard really 3 very different types of testimony today. And we want to bring you up to speed on what it is that the jury heard. So let's give you a quick overview of that. Jurors saw very graphic photos as we learned details of the victims' autopsies today. We also got new details about data collected from Libby German's cell phone and a tense courtroom confrontation between a witness and the defense team. Let's begin with the autopsies. The coroner who performed those autopsies the day after Abby and Libby were murdered showed jurors.
Okay, I'm not the all-knowing here, and I see a couple of people are upset in here. We're not here to argue. We can agree to disagree, but I'm putting the link up, and I would love, you don't have to be on camera. You do not have to be on camera. I'll get something set up where people can call in. Hell, I mean, everyone's got my damn phone number. You might as well just call my phone. So I'm not the all-knowing. I want to know what you know that makes you think that Richard Allen did all of this by himself.
The actual wounds that the girls had. The photos showed one large gaping hole on the side of Abby's neck that severed her jugular vein. Libby had 3 large deep holes that severed both her jugular and 2 carotid arteries. Dr. Roland Kaur explained how that would result in tremendous blood loss, a drop in blood pressure and heart rate, eventually leading to a loss of consciousness, with the girls dying within, he estimated, within 5 to 10 minutes. He told jurors that he could not be exact as far as a time of death, but he said that the bodies looked consistent during the autopsies with victims who would have died the afternoon before, and that is certainly the timeline of what the state says happened in this case. Other things that we discovered during the autopsy today, Dr. Kaur told jurors there were no outward signs of sexual assault on either of the girls, no signs of defensive wounds to suggest that there was a struggle. He did note during the autopsy very faint lines across Abby's face, and he said that that could suggest that something might have been placed over her mouth, perhaps duct tape, but he was quick to point out there was no residue of duct tape or anything else. So he wasn't really sure about that, but he did point out some lines there. Dr. Kaur said some of the abrasions on Libby's neck could be consistent with the slide on the side of a box cutter that engages the blade. But during cross-examination, he admitted that he did not know if a box cutter was what caused the girls' fatal injuries.
I don't know why they keep talking about box cutter, box cutter, box cutter, when the medical examiner said the abrasions on her neck, anyone think somebody tried to strangle her? Anyone think that might have happened? The gaping wound in the side of Abby's neck is not from a damn box cutter. You see, there's other people involved. and they're missing the weapon. That box cutter is not going to do that. Gaping. You can't, the blade on a box cutter is not that long. And it was twisted into the side of her neck. YouTube's going to be hating me today for being so graphic. Come on, YouTube. Come on, YouTube. You love to stick it in and break it off on me every day. Come on, let's do this.
And he also said that he could not determine whether there was one sharp instrument or multiple sharp instruments that caused these really graphic wounds. And I've got to tell
Thank you. The medical examiner said cannot say if it was one sharp instrument or multiple that caused these horrific wounds. Wasn't just one, but he doesn't know. But we're still on white van, unspent casing, and these confessions made under the influence of Haldol. Again, I think he is somewhere involved. I do.
tell you, the pictures, they were brutal. They were just brutal to look at in court today. I was sitting right by the jurors, and the juror seated in seat number 6, he barely looked at these photos at all. When they were up on the big screen that is inside the courtroom, he really put his head down in his hands like this. His face got bright red. He couldn't bring himself to look at the photos for more than just a quick second or two. He'd glance up and he very quickly would look back down again. This was tough.
I think this is the juror that has consistently done that when we have seen these photos, although many of them have expressed difficulty, but I think he is the one that I note the most.
He's the one who has struggled the most, and we do know from jury selection, he works around kids. He's a transportation supervisor, and he works around kids, and you can just tell this is just
a transportation supervisor that works around kids. They're talking about the juror. That means he drives a school bus, okay? A transportation supervisor that works around kids, we know what that means. He drives a big yellow fucking school bus. I believe this is the juror that got super upset earlier in the week, that jumped up, yelled at the judge, and said, let him finish. Because they want the information. And information and evidence is being withheld from this jury, in my opinion, allegedly.
gut-wrenching, and some of the jurors are able to stay composed with a stone face, and I can't blame them. I mean,
No.
I found myself turning away at times too.
Same.
And you know,
Same.
the whole idea here is, you know, this is important evidence. The jurors need to understand what happened and the injuries, how all this played out. But extremely difficult pictures and images for the jury, Scott, to see in the courtroom today.
We're going to get back to you shortly. Our legal expert is in studio with me tonight. This is attorney Katie Jackson-Lindsay. She's with us every night. So what is the importance of showing these autopsy images to this jury?
Well, it goes back to the fact that the state has certain elements they have to prove as it relates to murder. So they have to prove that this was a murder, it was a killing. And so manner and cause of death is really important to that analysis and to proving that element.
And what else might the jurors get from hearing from the pathologist?
So they will also learn the nature of the injuries, the extent of the injuries, and the effect that those injuries would have had on each of the girls. There's been some issues raised through defense questioning about whether The jury should be considering whether they fought back, if there were defensive wounds, if they may have screamed out and others may have heard that. We can see the defense building that storyline, right? So it's important to hear from the pathologist how they would have been affected by these injuries, how quickly they would have sort of succumbed to these injuries, and the overall effect it would have had on their body and their ability to fight back or to scream out.
Okay. She's putting this in a preschool language for me, which is fine by me. I think we can figure out cause and manner of death, because when you have a gaping hole in your jugular, you're not going to last too long. FBI said several years ago that the amount of blood, even for all the crime scenes they have seen, was an exorbitant amount of blood. Somebody was really looking for the bleed out, if you know what I mean. Once someone's not fighting back or screaming, you think you'd be done, right? As far as, well, that's the reason there was no screams. Well, what about down the hill? Over a private drive? Across the creek? Up the creek bank? Down another hill? Those two girls together would have screamed. They're missing something here. And I understand it had already been so many years without a break in the case that there was more. We want the truth. We're pro-truth here, okay? We're not pro-guilt, pro-innocence. But the truth. I understand in 2022 that the DA was running for re-election. So he wanted to get somebody on the hook for his biggest case. And I don't know how many of you have teenage children, but they're not quiet. No. And the two of them together leaning on each other's strength, they would have screamed. They would have ran. There's more to it.
Other thing that we wanted to talk about, the defense team filed a motion today to admit evidence of Odinism, Norse paganism, ritualistic killing. So previously, as we've been reporting, the judge ruled this information could not be allowed in. But why does the defense think that this motion should be filed now? And do they actually have a chance to get the judge to, change her mind, basically, and allow this in?
Well, based on the reason they have given, the judge should at least consider it. So within our legal rules, there is this concept of opening the door. And what that means is if one party or the other makes a request that certain evidence be kept out, if the other party believes that they've now opened the door to that evidence, it's considered unfair for the offering party to not be able to talk about it. So what the defense has said in their motion is that, Judge, you have ruled that we cannot talk about this as a possible motive, this Odinism religious issue as a possible motive for this killing. But now an expert has taken the stand, or a witness has taken the stand and given a reason for the configuration of these sticks, a reason that we have evidence that supports that there's an alternative theory behind this. And so essentially the state has asked that we not talk about this at all, but they've opened the door to it by eliciting testimony that those sticks were put there in order to conceal the bodies, when we all know from the pretrial motions that were filed that there's a theory that those sticks were put there as some sort of religious representation.
Okay, we're going to talk about this. Oh, yes, we are. The placement of the sticks, the dynamics of the sticks, the way that the girls were placed. FBI, they have a lot of different departments and very smart people. that said this isn't just someone throwing sticks trying to cover up the girls, because they weren't covered. They weren't covered at all. They were placed in a certain way, as in sacrifice. After that report, the FBI was sent away. The girls were staged in a certain way. We know they weren't killed where they were found.
How soon would you guess that we might hear a ruling from the judge on that particular motion?
Well, now that we're in trial, things are moving very quickly. And one thing they noted at the end of their motion was that part of why they're filing this now is because they have to make arrangements for their witnesses to come in. So they have an expert as it relates to the whole Odinism aspect of their defense. And they would presumably have to fly that person in and make arrangements for them. So what they've asked the court is to issue a ruling sooner rather than later.
But that would likely be what the defense brings in once the state rests their case, correct?
Yes, it would.
Okay, we'll get back to that. Nufflin, she said, I bet they were virgins and this was staged. Well, the staging of the bodies has been proven. The way the sticks were laid out on them is proven. Now, I'm very upset that they're not letting this quote unquote theory be put in. I'm upset that they did not bring up Kegan Kline. Kegan Kline, who had the Anthony Schatz profile, lured the girls out. Some of his messages to Libby were all about, are you a virgin or not? You see, Kegan was being Satan's secretary that day. He says he knows nothing about the murders, nothing about the murders. But he lured those girls out there. Why was that not allowed in court? Dark Willow, my goodness, girlfriend, you're making it rain. Y'all get your umbrellas. Thank you so much for supporting this channel. You guys are the absolute best. All right, let's look at this. 2:14 p.m. Libby's phone locks. 2:14 and 31 seconds. Libby tries unsuccessfully to unlock her phone. 2:39 p.m., her phone totally stops moving. There's no movement. You see, if I grab my phone right now and I walk to the kitchen, I walk across the street to talk to Linda, anything, you're going to see movement on my phone. Her phone totally stopped moving. 4:06 p.m. is when her grandma texted her. Now, I have two different articles. One says 2:32 p.m. and one says 2:39 p.m. I know some people will say, well, it's just a couple of minutes. It's not a big deal. No. In these cases, minutes count. Minutes count. We know roughly around 5:30, FBI testified someone plugged headphones in to Libby's phone.
X comes into Libby's phone at 4:06 saying, you need to call me now. And then at 10 p.m., Sergeant Cecil testifies that the phone kind of went into a power saver mode, a hibernation mode, if you will, to preserve what battery was left, but that the phone continued to receive FaceTime calls coming in and iPhone iPhone messages from other iPhones coming in, texts. And then at 4:33 a.m., we learned that 15 SMS texts came into that phone at 4:33 a.m. and Sergeant Cecil couldn't explain why. After all of that time, all of a sudden, 4:33 a.m., boom, 15 SMS texts came in. He was asked, could it be possibly because the phone then just connected to a cell tower? And he said yes. And then we know that the phone powered down at 4:34 a.m. We also heard about the movement of the.
Okay. Could it be because her phone had a tower? Yes. Look at the time again. He said yes. 4:33 a.m. Suddenly, 15 text messages are received. SMS means they're just, text, words. Like if I say, Ilyanka, hey girl, what's up? That's an SMS text. Then at 4:34, the phone's totally off. Once they shut down the search at midnight is when the girls got moved. They were never allowed to search Ron Logan's shed. Never. But it's always made a little sense to me that the girls were in Ron Logan's shed and then moved.
After all of that time, all of a sudden, 4:33 a.m., boom, 15 SMS texts came in. He was asked, could it be possibly because the phone then just connected to a cell tower? And he said yes. And then we know that the phone powered down at 4:34 a.m. We also heard about the movement of the cell phone, the actual movement that they can tell now when they analyze data from a health app. And so at 1:31, that phone started moving, Bob, about 1,600 steps.
It was
they
fascinating,
said, yeah,
because they walked us through, and we could see how many steps that Libby took.
Yes.
She was the one
holding
who
the
had
phone,
the phone
presumably,
at the time,
right?
and you could see it's amazing now with this
What they can tell.
technology. And here's the interesting thing.
And some people still swear that Kelsey German is responsible for this. That's her sister. That's Libby's sister. That's her sister. Come on. I'm not saying sisters don't do nasty shit to each other, but that's her sister. They know she dropped them off. There would be more to those videos than Abby on the bridge and down the hill if Kelsey was there. No way. 1:33 p.m., phone moves 1,600 steps. 2:08 p.m., phone stops and starts moving. 2:18 p.m., phone stops moving. 2:25 p.m., phone starts moving again. 2:25 is when down the hill happened. Because, the girls are probably sitting, talking, something like that. But at 2:25 is when things changed. And that's when this happened. That's the reason the phone started moving again.
Devices belonging to Richard Allen. And the testimony was, when Sergeant Cecil was questioned by the defense, did you find any information on Richard Allen's 26 devices connecting him to Abby and Libby? He said no. Did you find any information connecting him to the murders? He said no. And then when the prosecution redirected, they asked, okay, but of those 26 devices, was one of them Richard Allen's cell phone from 2017? And no, it was not. So we found out that too.
And Emily, we should point out that this testimony that really they.
Okay, we have to listen to that again. Because this is a very important part of testimony. And look, I'm not jonesing for old Richie to be innocent. I want the right person.
He said no. And then when the prosecution redirected, they asked, okay, but of those 26 devices, was one of them Richard Allen's cell phone from 2017? And no, it was not. So we found out that too.
And Emily.
This is very important. Very important. Out of the 26 devices that they went through that pinged off those towers A to Z, they had to admit that Richard Allen's wasn't one of them.
We should point out that this testimony that really they said ahead of time this was going to be really dense. They kept using the word dense for the testimony that the jury was going to hear, and it came at the end, keep in mind, of a very long day of testimony involving these really graphic autopsy photos. And yet, Emily, the jury was absolutely captivated by this technical information with these phones.
They did. They had more than 10 questions, and really good questions. They asked about that pic at 2:07 posted by Libby to Snapchat. They asked why was that photo? Why couldn't you find that on her phone when it was extracted? Why wasn't it in the Snapchat storage, the Snapchat cache? Sergeant Cecil could not answer that. They asked, could that 2:07 photo showing Abby on the bridge, could it have been posted from another device after logging in to Libby's Snapchat account? And Sergeant Cecil said, yeah, possibly. So he really could not explain why that photo was not on that device in all of the extractions that they have done, that 2:07 photo. So the jury had a lot of questions. It made me wonder, and I haven't gone through all of their bios, but did somebody on that jury, are they a tech head? Did they have, some kind of deeper knowledge? Because the questions, many of them were so precise.
Yeah. So Scott, again, the jury has really been, give them a lot of credit. They've been taking notes. They have been really paying very close attention. We mentioned the one juror who had to look away during the.
I bet they are. I bet they have been taking notes. They're still deliberating. We have no idea when they're going to come back with their answer. But as it is right now, sorry, I have a little bit of a frog in my throat. I guarantee they were taking tons of notes. Because normally, as we have seen in many, 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 many other trials that we have gone through together, it's pretty laid out like a Texas roadmap for the jury. They make it make sense real quick. These people have got to be so damn confused. And they know they're struggling. They have to give an answer. They have to give finality to the families, to the Delphi community, and justice for Abby and Libby. But is justice the wrong person? No. No. His damn cell phone wasn't even there. Bullet, white van, and confessions. That's what they have.
Really graphic photos, but almost without exception, these jurors have been asking questions, sending questions to the judge to be able to ask the witnesses. They've been paying very close attention to the testimony. They are very much engaged in this whole process, Scott.
All right. Thanks so much, Bob and Emily. We'll get back to you in a second. Let's bring Katie back in and talk a little bit about the cell phone testimony. Lots of technical information. The jurors seem engaged. What do you make based on seeing the timeline and the extraction information that was pulled from Libby's phone?
Well, it sounds like it was very intriguing testimony. And it honestly sounds like it raised more questions than it gave answers. And having worked on both sides of the aisle, having been a deputy prosecutor, having been a defense attorney, that's really a prosecutor's worst nightmare. But it's also their job. Their job is to put on all of the evidence, put on the truth, regardless of how ugly it may be for them. And I'm sure that they anticipated that this particular testimony would raise more questions than answers. And I'm assuming that they're hoping they'll be able to answer some of those questions down the line.
Does the timeline and some of the extraction information give you any idea of whether or not the phone and the bodies were moved out of that ground zero that we've talked about where the girls were?
Well, I think it definitely opens up that possibility because we have this information now that around 4:30, the phone went into what they thought was completely nothing, right? Nothing happened. And then it went into power save mode around 10 p.m. And so it makes you question where is all of the information in that time frame, obviously, and then where is all of the information in between the 10 p.m. and the 4:30 a.m. And so I think what Emily raised about the expert indicating that if the phone was in a vehicle, we would not know that. That's huge. That's huge. That's an unknown. And that is the epitome of reasonable doubt. And
woo, a girl knows what she's talking about. And remember, she is a former prosecutor. Prosecutors don't like those two words. Reasonable doubt. Prosecutors hate that shit. They'd rather say to the jury, open your mouth, swallow the shit, and let's go home. You're going to have to understand this. And to be quite honest, usually the state's case is ironclad because they don't, especially with the judges do not want the appellate court to come after them. They don't want to deal with the media, but time is so important in these cases. There's too many things they can't prove. In my opinion, it's because they're missing other people. They're missing other people. In this amount of time, this couldn't have happened. No way. Libby's cell phone tells the story. It stops moving at 2:32 p.m. Another article says 2:39 p.m. Someone plugs headphones into it around 5:32 p.m. The phone was found by her body. It wasn't like it was thrown up in the tree. Search was called off at midnight. Somebody, and it was not Richard Allen, moved them. And the only logical place I can think of is out of Ron Logan's shed. Because it's only a couple hundred feet away from his shed where they were found, they were staged, Abby was redressed, and the sticks were on them.
In terms of whether or not we know those bodies that their life ended right then and there versus at some other location.
And then again, the testimony about the multiple devices that Richard Allen had don't connect Richard Allen to the girls, but as they point out, his phone that he had in 2017 was not extracted, correct?
Right. So I think we have to just accept that evidence doesn't do anything for anyone, right? If it wasn't the phone that he had in 2017, the jury shouldn't charge that to the state and say, well, you presented evidence that those phones show that he, wasn't in that area. Well, those phones aren't even relevant at this point because it's not the phone that he had at the time. So I don't think that's something that the jury should be charging to the state in that instance. But obviously it's something that the defense wants to highlight because it does say you can't put him there through any phone evidence.
Okay, we'll get back with Katie in a moment. Let's get back out to Del.
Okay, no phone evidence, no DNA. No phone evidence, no DNA. Unspent bullet, which could go into many pew-pews in Indiana, in Delphi. Hell, I probably have a pew-pew around here. It would fit.
Name is Sarah Carbaugh. She says she's as local as it gets. She's lived around Delphi her whole life. She's incredibly familiar with the Delphi trails and the Monon High Bridge. She says she takes her dogs out there multiple times a week. And on the day of the murders, she was driving her car past the trails when she saw something that really sticks out in her mind. And her testimony was how our day started, and it was an unusual testimony. She testified seeing Bridge Guy, and I'm sure you probably all remember the photo. We can show that to you. The man known as Bridge Guy, that's the person that Libby captured the image of on her cell phone on the day of the murders on the Monon High Bridge. Sarah Carbaugh told the jury that she drove just a few feet away from Bridge Guy later that same afternoon. She testified, she said, "I saw a man covered in mud and blood walking on the side of the road." She told jurors she saw him for about 30 seconds. His behavior, she described it as sketchy. And she said that he really stood out because he was wearing a lot of clothes on what was a warm February day.
Okay, warm February day, warm February day, warm February day, caked in mud and blood. Some people are giving this woman a lot of hell going, why would you not ask old boy if he needed some help? He's covered in blood. He's caked in mud. I certainly would have made a mental note. I would have made a mental note of that for sure. And the thing is, not to be gruesome here, how does she know the difference between mud and blood? You see, once blood hits the air, it's not bright red. She's talking about his clothes. Nobody's going to worry about somebody being caked in mud. It just means they went across the street, they got into a ditch. But exactly what did she see that in her mind said covered in blood? Do you have blood all over his face? On his hands? What are we talking about?
And in her words, she said he was caked so much in mud, he had to be right down by the river. When it came time for cross-examination, defense attorney Andrew Baldwin pointed out that her story about Bridge Guy has changed over the years, specifically the part about the mud and the blood. He pointed out in her first interview after the murders, which took place a couple weeks after the murders, while talking to police, Carbaugh mentioned 11 times the man she saw was muddy, but she didn't mention blood at all. During a second interview, she talked 16 times about Bridge Guy being covered in mud, but again, the transcript from that interview has no mention of blood anywhere.
Woo! 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 Sarah, interview 1. She mentions mud. No blood. Interview 2. Mud. No blood. Interview 3. No mud, but now blood. Listen, I think we have all cut ourselves before. We have had blood had to be drawn for, medical reasons. It's not that slop they put on people in horror movies. Why did they not ask Sarah? Why did they not point straight to Richard Allen and say, is that the man you saw with mud and blood on him? Let's go to interview 1. Is this the man you saw with mud all over him? Let's go to interview 2. Is that man right there? He hasn't aged that much. Is that the man you saw that you mentioned 13 times having mud all over him? Or is that the man you saw from interview 3 that had no effing mud on him, but blood all over him? Why was that dismissed as a question?
In that transcript during the interview. And then 2 years later, in 2019, during a third interview, the transcript shows she never mentioned Bridge Guy being muddy. Instead, she said he was bloody, something she talked about 16 times in that interview. Carbaugh denied all that, insisting that her story has never changed. And when the defense attorney asked if she wanted to review her transcript, she reviewed the first transcript and she admitted that even though she thought that maybe one time she mentioned that Bridge Guy was bloody, she looked through the transcript and she acknowledged, okay, I don't see it anywhere in here. And then she insisted, again, second and third interviews, nothing changed, that she reported muddy and bloody. And when Andrew Baldwin, the defense attorney, said, all right, let me show you these transcripts. Would you like to review the transcripts from your second and your third interviews with police? She said, no, I'm good. She really, at that point, got very defensive. And that started this series of really tense exchanges. And I wrote down notes on a couple of them. When Andrew Baldwin continued to bring up this inconsistency that he said in her stories, she looked at him and she said, are we going to do this again? And he looked right back at her and he said, yes, we are. And he continued with that line of questioning. And I think it really highlighted for the jury the potential that her story had changed. Carbaugh, at one point, in talking about these inconsistencies, she said, I saw Bridge Guy walking on the side of the road covered in mud and blood, and that's that. Again, a testy exchange. She didn't want to be questioned anymore about what.
She said, and that's that. And that's that. He was covered in mud and blood, she said, and that's that. She didn't like being pinned down on her story changing. Brad Weber didn't like being pinned down on the inconsistencies in his story. That's that. Just believe me. I saw a guy covered, caked originally. Originally, it was caked in mud. Then covered in blood. Nobody in their right mind is going to see someone covered in blood unless they have a rifle on their shoulder and they're skinning a deer without calling for help. Okay? No. No. And yes, there has been, Jamie, you're exactly right. There has been some drug issues in each child's family, Libby's and Abby's. I know some people say this is a drug debt. This is this and this and this going on. I think it went on a little too long for it to be a drug debt, but that is just my opinion.
What were potential inconsistencies. And at one point, there was an exchange between Andrew Baldwin and Sarah Carbaugh. She was asked by the jury how far away she was from Bridge Guy when she drove by.
Right.
And her response was she was 3 feet away. Well, when it came time for some cross-examination on that, Andrew Baldwin said, wait a second, when you talked to police, you said that you were 20 feet away. And her response was, well, I didn't have a ruler or a tape measure with me. Who does that when they're driving? It was very tense. And I think, quite honestly, I think her demeanor, I think the questions that Andrew Baldwin was asking on behalf of the defense, they seemed like legitimate questions, and the way she responded, I don't think struck a good note with the jury.
And just in speaking with Bob today, talking about the exchange where she had said he looked like he had fallen down a cliff at one point, that he was so, muddy and tore up. And Andrew Baldwin asked her, well, did you think to stop to help him? Did you think to stop to help him? She said, I'm a female by myself.
Yeah.
I'm not going to stop to help a random guy I don't know.
Okay, I'm not going to stop to help a random guy I don't know. No, you call 911. I saw somebody with blood all over him. And I don't see him dragging a deer or gutting fish. That's insane. Now, I know that old Fran has said no Odinism is going to be allowed in the trial. Well, the trial's over because they're deliberating. Odinism in that area has also been directly linked to Elizabeth and Lyric, who were abducted and found murdered in the woods in Evansdale, Indiana. Odinism has actually been linked to the Flora murders. Now, these are open and ongoing investigations. The Coinky Dinks make my stomach turn. And when I hear some of these crackpot creators out there that just instantly want old Richie put behind bars forever, they need to do their frigging homework. And February 13th is a very special holiday for the Odinists. A very special one. I don't know because I don't celebrate it. I don't celebrate it. I don't even think about February 13th. You know why? Because it's the anniversary of me and my first husband. Now, he's a good guy. Too many of these freaks are involved. Gaelic girls said 36% say hung jury. And I have an entire notebook I've gone through about Elizabeth and Lyric. And the same shit happened in Evansdale that happened with Abby and Libby. And if you all would like, I can do a show, or I can put all of the Coinky Dinks together. But you know what I say on here? Coincidence is evidence. Too many crimes unsolved that have the Odinists involved. Let's see here. Walking Dead, Evansville, Evansdale. Chaos said, Brooks, I think people should do their research on the history of Indiana, especially our small towns. I wouldn't put anything past what happens in Indiana. Girl, I say it all the time, in Oklahoma too.
Yeah, and Scott, I'm really interested. A question to pass along to Katie here. With this witness, and again, there were 3 other witnesses earlier in the week, and they all testified that they saw Bridge Guy. And state police and the prosecutor insist Bridge Guy is the defendant, is Richard Allen. So you had 3 people in the courtroom, now 4 with Sarah Carball,
Right.
4 people who say on the afternoon of these murders, they saw Bridge Guy, and yet at the defense table, just a few feet in front of all these witnesses,
Is Richard Allen.
is the man that the state says is Bridge Guy, and yet not once have we ever heard the prosecutors ask those witnesses, is the man sitting right there, is that Bridge Guy? And I'm curious.
Okay, this is so important. This is so important. Not once have the prosecutors asked the witnesses, is this Bridge Guy? Is this Bridge Guy? Is this Bridge Guy? We have 2 different sketches of Bridge Guy, my friends. Okay, we have 2. All right. The final sketch looks just like Brad Holder to me. But hey, that's just me. And if you look at Brad Holder's Facebook, he is up to his eyeballs in Odinism. Sketch 1 appears to me to be Chadwell. Because at the time, he had that Justin Timberlake bullshit looking hair going on. He didn't get straight and shit like that until later when he got arrested. Looks just like him.
Curious to get Katie's take, Scott, about is that good legal strategy? Because I'm wondering if the jury has the same questions that I do, why they wouldn't be doing that.
Yeah, that is a really good point. So let's ask Katie that. Why wouldn't you ask these witnesses, hey, is the guy that you saw that day, Richard Allen, sitting right here? Why wouldn't you ask that?
As a trial lawyer, one of the first things you learn in law school is you do not ask a question that you do not know the answer to. And what we've learned about this last witness in particular is that she was really unpredictable. She was really what trial attorneys would consider a wild card as a witness, and her credibility was at issue. So it could be for the state that they're not really sure how she would answer it. It could be because she's answered that question in different ways before. But from a true legal technical standpoint, it could be that the defense could raise the argument that any identification that she would make at this point would be suggestive because Richard Allen's face has been plastered all over the media. And so it's hard to tell which of those it is, but it's important to highlight that neither side asked that question. And both sides would have done pretrial discovery to the extent that they should know what her answer should be at this point. And the fact that both sides stayed away from that question, I think is pretty curious, and it had to be a part of strategy.
Well, it would make sense that if the defense thinks that the witnesses are going to say, yeah, that was Richard Allen, they wouldn't ask. But if they thought that, oh no, they're going to point to someone else, why wouldn't the defense jump in and ask?
Well, that's exactly why I go back to this witness is a wild card. She is any party's worst nightmare. She has given inconsistent statements about something that's so important as a muddy and bloody guy on the bridge.
And I hope the jury thinks about that. If an eyewitness is inconsistent with their statements, there's a problem. You have to dismiss that. You have to dismiss that. Bonnie Brown said it does look like them. Well, yeah, it does. Damn right it does. Damn right. And Top Cop of Indiana said they were still looking for other suspects, as in people involved. He spoke about the shack. He spoke about tentacles. Well, where's the other tentacles? I can break this down real damn quick. Real damn quick. You have a ring in Indiana that hasn't been broken up yet.
Bridge that day.
Right.
And so if you just pay attention to the sheer amount of time that was spent with her, the state treated her in a way that it was clear that they wanted to get the information they needed, get her.
If I was the defense, I would have asked Richard to walk. You know why? Because Richard doesn't have that gait. I know some people will say since he's walking across the bridge, his gait was off because it's uneven. No, we can still walk straight. Dude, we still walk straight. The one that favors one leg over the other is Ron Logan. And if Richard Allen is found guilty, that means this investigation is 100% over, and whoever else is involved is done. They had Ron Logan on WISH. Hell, he had the same friggin' hoodie on. I'm not saying that old bastard did it, or that he could do it by himself. No way. No way. Kegan lured them out there with a fake profile. What on earth is Angel doing? Girl, you're going to be in trouble today. Look at this. Look at all these gift memberships coming in. What on earth is going on? What am I going to do? Why is YouTube hating on Brit and Walking Dead? They've been looking for memberships for a long time. And if you're going to confess, other confessions take more than 5 minutes. They're extremely detailed. And another investigation goes into it because they're not just going to take your word for it. You know how many people have confessed to JonBenet Ramsey? You know how many people have confessed to Kennedy's assassination? They have to investigate what they're being told to prove it. They didn't even investigate his confession. How in the hell does that happen? Holy shit.
No, they're going to point to someone else. Why wouldn't the defense jump in and ask?
Well, that's exactly why I go back to this witness is a wild card. She is any party's.
Okay, I can help old boy here. Why didn't the defense ask? Because the defense would be out of their freaking minds if they have Miss Mud and Blood on the stand that has changed her story this many times, and they point to Richard Allen and said, is that the person you saw on February 13th, 2017? And if she says, yes, you got a problem. The defense is not going to ask her that because, like old girl in the very pretty cobalt dress said, because she's a wild card. Can't do anything with Ron Logan because he's in hell right now. He's busy down there. Brad had inconsistent statements. There's just way more to this. There's way more to this ring.
worst nightmare. She has given inconsistent statements about something that's so important as a muddy and bloody guy on the bridge that day.
Right.
And so if you just pay attention to the sheer amount of time that was spent with her, the state treated her in a way that it was clear that they wanted to get the information they needed, get her on the stand, and get her out of there. And I think that says a lot about a witness who has information that's so significant to this trial in terms of seeing a bloody guy out there that day. And it appears that the defense tried to do that too, but she was willing to spar with them a little bit. And you never want that to happen as a defense attorney. You don't want the jury to think you're beating up on a witness, especially a local civilian who's just here to tell her truth. So with that kind of witness, you have to be very careful. And if they're unpredictable in what they might say, or if she's given inconsistent testimony as to whether or not that person looks like Richard Allen, it's safer for either side just to not deal with it.
Okay, so that rules out this witness that we're talking about. What about the other three?
That's a great question.
Why not ask these three? Hey, is the guy that you saw on the trail that day the defendant, Richard Allen?
Well, what we know is that the state should have been the party to ask that specific question, right? It's the state's burden to prove in those elements we keep going back to in terms of proving murder. They have to prove that Richard Allen, the defendant, committed these crimes. And so the onus would have been on the state to prove identity at that moment and make an in-court identification. And so the defense handled that exactly the way that they should. They raised questions about the build, the height, the weight, the hair of each of those individuals, the age, and they really highlighted that it was inconsistent with Richard Allen. And so that gives them an opportunity to follow up later on that.
You know, these are their own people. These are their own local news anchors that are saying everything we're getting from this trial is inconsistent. Heidi Faye said, I'll never be convinced that Kegan Kline didn't set it up. Yeah, he lured the girls down there. He did. He did. And him and his dad hightailed it to Las Vegas the next day and did like an instant turnaround and came back to Indiana. Sounds to me like they had something to sell. Absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. I can't say that Kegan knew there was going to be a murder or a sacrifice there that day, but he's definitely part of it. But they won't bring that up in this trial. You see, to get to the truth, you have to have all of the truth. You have to have every single bit of it. And it appears to me, from what I've been hearing in this trial, they aren't even getting the tip of the iceberg. Abby and Libby need justice. Abby and Libby need justice.
This is your guy?
The judge signed the probable cause affidavit for the arrest of Richard Allen for 2 counts of murder. Yes.
Do you think there are other people involved?
I'm not going to go there. I really hope that now that we're in this phase of prosecutorial process and due process, because everyone's innocent until they're proven guilty.
Sickening. Sickening. Thank you, Chaos Cord, for reminding me of that. You are right, because in the beginning of the investigation, Richard Allen was interviewed and he was cleared. Then they said due to a clerical error by somebody that was a temp for the FBI. Well, I mean, aren't we all? Who in here is a temp for the FBI? I'll go ahead and say I am. Hell yeah, I try to help them out all the damn time. Sophia can temp for the FBI. Anders can. We damn sure know Walking Dead would. She'd walk right into the FBI and say, hey, I'm new here. I'll help you out. I'm all about this. Katie, she's like, I'm a temp for the FBI, but it's a clerical error is why they had to bring him back in. Get the hell out of here. Lordy. Lordy, lordy. Well, I want to say thank you to you all for being here today. Thank you so much for your donations to the channel. Thank you for being longtime members. Remember, it's 8 quarters. It's 8 quarters. 8 quarters. We are going to have a members live this weekend, so I hope you can join us. Thank you to the most fantastic mod squad on the YouTube streets, and thank you to the most amazing friends any girl can ask for on these filthy YouTube streets. So I will see you this weekend, but we are on verdict watch, so please have your reminders on. Remind all, remind all, remind all, so that way you do not miss it when we can come together to discuss the verdict, good, bad, or indifferent. Love you all. See you soon.